Yes.
The James Bond road race set you got there, is there anything in the box?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's like about half a dozen rectangular tiles that are, terraformed with different levels of dimensionality and paint. And I think it was a set that
I have one.
Gilbert really lost their, lost a lot of money on.
That put him out of business.
Were returned as being too finicky for Christmas morning for some some parents that were like, thought it was a good idea.
That's what put him out of business. I have one. I was looking for a box for one. That's what I was wondering.
You would think they were made by Boeing.
I don't think I have a spare box.
Okay.
I mean, it's not an unreasonable request. I might, but I'm pretty sure I don't. But it's a fair question. I appreciate it. Yes.
No problem.
Okay, guys, we are live on the interweb. Folks, it's Max and Max's Models. Everybody, welcome aboard. And we have Steve with us as usual. Ken may call in later. He's on the road right now. And we're very fortunate to have, is it Mark? Mark, do you say it Mattei or Mattei?
Italian last name, pronounced Mattei.
Mattei.
Mark Mattei.
And Mark is, as many of you already know, and I put a link to the video below, he has a little over half-hour video on YouTube of a magnificent collection. And it's not a stash, it's a collection. And I'd say there's a little bit of difference between a stash and a collection, although it's razor thin. But he also has a lot of art and other stuff. So we're going to be rolling a few pictures while he talks about it. But first off, before we get into that, Mark, you want to just go ahead and give us a little background on you and how you ended up with so many models?
Well, I was born in '51, so like a lot of the audience, as a 8, 9-year-old, started building models, and as I got into my early teens, started playing with slot cars and whatnot, and it was a real evocative period, and from childhood, it's something I found comfort in. So, so that was the groundwork just to kind of get me into it. But fast forward to about 1973, my dad staked me to a couple of $1,000 and it helped me start a little bicycle shop. And I opened the shop. When the doors finally opened after a couple of months of remodeling, it was my deal. Dad just let me have full run of it and let me sink or swim on my own volition. So it was 73. Opened a little bicycle shop, just doing repairs and patching up secondhand bikes for rentals and stuff like that. But and I'd opened in late summer, which is not an optimal time to open a bicycle shop, being seasonal. But I was open about a month, and it just struck me. I said, gee, I've got a retail location, and I've got a tax ID. I can buy stuff at wholesale, not just from bicycle wholesalers, but I can probably go to a hobby wholesaler. So
a tax ID number is a tax ID number is a tax ID number.
Yeah, no, that's the ticket there. You get that, and then you go to the wholesalers, and it's like you hand that to them, and it's like, okay, you're square. You're good to go. But I'm trying to cut this short here, not go on for it. So I found a venerable, full-service hobby industry wholesaler that had been probably around at that point at least 40 years on the south side of Chicago. Name was Trost, was the family name, the surname, Trost, Trost. And so, I think a number of people out there probably were aware of that. It was an interesting operation, and they had a deal where most normal businesses, as reasonably enough as product would become obsolete or long in the tooth, they would close it out. These folks didn't bother to close it out. If they had product that was getting a little stale, they would just move it to a second warehouse, an unheated warehouse that was strictly for storage. And when I say a warehouse, it's like an old industrial building, huge building. So they were never at a loss for space. So the punchline is I start going to these in the fall, just not as a business proposition, but just to like, well, it's winter, you know, I'm not finding any bicycles. I'll buy some model cars and some old slot cars and amuse myself just sitting around my shop, because I was literally living in my shop the first 6 months before I actually got back into a proper living scenario. And one thing led to another. I discovered the place circa 73, 74 had a lot of classic 64 to 66, 67, vintage slot car stuff in the shipping cases. Like, there's a box with half a dozen Cox 2E wing cars in it, or half a dozen MPC 66 Chargers, large scale stuff. So I fiddled around with that, and
so Matt, this is Steve. I just want to interject something, ask a question. So you really benefited because the time that you were starting to buy the slot car stuff was when the slot car craze had kind of ended. So you were able to get
it. It was dead.
Yeah. So you got a lot of good deals on new old stock.
Right, because I mean, you've got the apocryphal stories about Cox taking their stale product in the late '60s and putting it in the landfill. That's true or not, I don't know, but it's a story I've heard enough times. There must be something to it. And or other companies, like losing control of their businesses and having to sell out. I think some of the major train manufacturers might have gone through a change of ownership because of the pasting they took on slot car misadventures, especially if it was ill-designed product. So I mean, it's like 1974. We're talking product that was 9 to 10 years old at that point. I'm doing the math right, yeah, and was totally obsolete. Let's say by '68. By '68, 90% or so of the commercial slot car tracks, the big 8-lane large-scale tracks, had gone out of business. And these larger scale cars by, all the major companies, Monogram and Strombecker and Cox and Revell, these were cars for commercial tracks. And by '68, certainly by '69, the tracks were effectively gone. You had a few holdouts, but they were gone. And what are you going to do with this stuff? It won't fit on an HO track, and you could use it as a static model if you wanted just to do it that way. But yeah, no, this was product that was dead and buried in as far as saleability, unless you were someone that just dug it as being a vintage item and a feel good thing from your childhood.
Which is I would not underestimate the value of feel good things, because that probably makes up 40% of this channel and a fair chunk of the business today. There's I use the clip from Mad Men when Don Draper's talking about nostalgia. It's delicate but potent, and it really is. When I go on eBay and see a 69-cent kit going for $50 or $100, I'm like, I know exactly what it is, because I've paid $45 for a 69-cent kit, because it, I built it 3 times as a kid. I have wonderful memories of it. Well, I won't go down that rabbit hole. Maybe not so wonderful, but I have memories of it. I wanted to buy the Aurora Piper Aztec, which was a 65, 70, maybe a $1 kit. And I bought it twice as a kid. And as I've told people before on this channel, I must have kept getting Friday afternoon airplanes, because every time I would open the box, it would have the clear parts from the Piper Cherokee. And of course, this is when Aurora was on its last legs. And then I find that this little, and it was an Aurora original, but I find one on eBay. It's got, and the first thing I do is look to make sure it has the correct clear parts, and they want $180 or $100 for it, and I'm like, I'm not paying that. But I'll tell you right now, I certainly thought about it, and so.
And Max, that was a Piper Aztec, you said?
Yeah, the Aurora Piper Aztec, yeah.
Right. I'll see if I have one. I'll let you know either way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead. I'm going to roll the pictures here, And this is actually what I'm doing is just really rolling the intro with the um, volume turned down. But let me roll it, and I'll pause it. And I want to tell you, I grabbed a lot of these screen grabs, somewhat randomishly. Some of them I picked, so some of them probably aren't going to be that great. But let me just skip. Go okay. Okay, here we go with, and you'll see it in about 15 to 20 seconds. And it's a lot of your Aurora airplanes, the Star Lifter. And by the way, before we get into the kits, I noticed you have a lot of this inbox art as well as the cover art. How did you wind up getting all this magnificent Aurora artwork?
I didn't really get exposed to commercial illustrative stuff that was used on the box tops till like the late 90s, maybe 1999. And I kind of stumbled into a situation where I ended up with about 25 pieces of illustration. And it was at a time, well, you had that through the 90s and into the early 2000s, you had all that turnover of ownership. You had all the, venerable American model kit companies merging, getting sold, closing down, whatever they were doing, and when you have that sort of upheaval, stuff literally gets thrown out, as we all know. Stuff becomes, a new boss comes in. What are we saving these old sketches for from the 1950s, or the 1960s? It's here it is 30 years later. We still have file cabinets full of this stuff. We didn't buy the company for, to preserve some odd scraps of old paper. So, it kicked off that way. Once I became aware of it being available in any capacity, I started searching for it, and then I, did the typical thing. I started looking at eBay. I'd go to more advanced, people that were dealers in classic toys that were dealing in, pre-war tin German ships or post-war Japanese robots and American cars, and some of these guys that were more knowledgeable would, they'd pay attention when they ran across an illustration that was tied in with a toy or model kit or whatever. And they, they were picking it up, probably just about the same time this stuff was reaching a low ebb of value of being, on its way to a dumpster, or whatnot, or some distressed situation. So that's how I sort of got started in the illustrative stuff.
And so you didn't get them all at one time in a block sale. You just picked them off as they came available.
I started out with a block about 25 pieces. Right now, I haven't counted it, but I certainly have more than 200 right now. And I mean, it went the whole gamut. I would track down surviving commercial artists and see if they had anything. I tracked down retired people that had worked at model companies, some as white-collar workers, some as people loading trucks, literally. And what else? Occasionally, some of your mid-range artists, auction houses like Heritage, and there's another one that do like collectibles. In the last decade or so, they've started to pay attention to illustrative stuff that's tied in with toys and model kits.
Well, it's funny.
And sometimes it would be an individual piece, and sometimes it would be, I find, 10 pieces, so it kind of was all over the place.
Uh-huh. Well, it's funny you should mention that. In getting ready for tonight's live stream, trying to do a little research, I found a pretty good video on YouTube about where they interviewed some of the pulp artists that did the books, did all the pulp action and all that stuff. And
sure.
They interviewed them, and they said that one of them said that the publishing house he worked for, when they changed hands, as you mentioned, that they took all of the pulp art, which was like in the basement, and he said, this was in New York, publishing house. He says, they literally put it on the sidewalk for the trash collectors to come get. And I'm like,
well, it's happened time and time again, absolutely.
and this was the same thing. This was industrial art.
Right. It's happened more often than not, really. It's sad, but it's just you know, it happens, and it could be illustrative art, it could be patent documents, it could be drafting, it could be engineering notes, it could be mock-up models or wooden patterns, or handmade models made prior to creating the tooling for injection molding, all that stuff. It just becomes clutter and not the focus of the people in charge at that point. Yeah.
If it wasn't for people like you and Phil Separano and Andy Yanchus, there would be a lot less of this stuff around too. So I really am grateful that you have taken this up as a hobby or a passion. I think at this point you're a little past hobby, but so this is the one. Here's the one I talked to you about. The XF-108 in the Lucite case, and there's the James Bond race car behind it, and I know that's something Steve loves to talk about. So if you want to tell us a story on that XF-108, and you guys can chat about that, the slot car that brought the company down.
It sure did. It was the Christmas toy in the Sears catalog in 1965.
Who made it? Aurora?
No, Gilbert.
Gilbert. The toy that killed Gilbert.
What?
The toy that killed Gilbert.
That's what it was. That put them into bankruptcy. That finished it for them because the return rate was astronomical. Now, the cars for the set were made by Aurora. They bought the cars from Aurora.
So, Mark, you were saying?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Gilbert doing not terraformed, tile-type track for their trains that had, culverts and bridges and all that stuff prior to doing this?
Yes, it was called All Aboard. And
that was probably moderately successful, I imagine.
It was, and they also came out with additional squares that you could buy that were landscapes so that you could change the configuration. So they brought it one step further with slot cars, because one of the big complaints about home slot car sets were, you have to put all the track together, and in those days you had to put pins at the end of the track, and they had little clips that held them together. So they did it with this, and that was after Goldfinger came out, which the DB5 was highly successful as got in everybody's eyeballs. But you were doing it with a much more diminutive rail for electric rails on the slot car set were like a third the size of a train rail, and also the vehicle weighed virtually nothing compared to like an O gauge or whatever gauge they were using on their locomotives and diesels. So you had a lightweight car and tiny rails, and it wasn't a single track. You had two tracks. You had cars have to race each other.
Yeah, and it was hard. It was hard to keep them on the track.
Suddenly you have a first, a second, a third, a challenge that they maybe they didn't figure on, and it just went badly for them. Yes.
Well, the defect rate was astronomical. Yeah. You have a bunch of switches in the tracks. You have a lot of wiring and a lot of lighting because it had lights at different portions of the track.
And they tried to make it on the cheap.
It just didn't. It just was horrible, and the returns were astronomical. That's why they're kind of.
It was sort of tragic because I mean it was sort of an exciting concept,
but a poor execution.
And if you had this set today and lavished, the skills we have now today, having fiddled with this stuff for most of our lives, we could any of us here could get it to work, that two people could run it. But
mine works.
Having a non-hobby or mechanically adept parent trying to put it together on Sunday morning is like, nope, that's not going to work. Yeah.
But that was the concept, was that you didn't have to be mechanically adept. You could just slap it together and it would go, and you'd have a race.
Well, that was the way it was supposed to work.
Right, but it didn't work. The defect rate was too high.
Yeah. And
so they returned them, and, they returned them all to Gilbert, and that's what put them under.
Mark, real quick, you were telling about this XF108. It is not a build-up, a store build-up.
Oh, yeah, that missile in the clear box there. Someone just done a nice job assembling what's it called, the rapier or something?
Rapier,
I can't quite read it.
Oh, yeah, rapier.
Yeah, and they've actually made. They've actually taken the original, the box that the kit was in, and they made that a base. They kind of a clever incorporation of the kit box artwork, but just making it the base of it. And the builder was so conscientious, they even made like a little white cardboard yoke to support this 45-degree raised missile to keep it from bouncing around when you're transporting it. But no, that's some guy made the Lucite box just to the right size and built it nicely, but it's not a store display. I believe it was made by Scott Virgo, which is a nice gentleman who unfortunately just left, passed on over the winter. But I think that was his work. I think he built that. Yes.
Well, that's by ITC, and it was based on what they thought the proposed XF108 was going to look like. The actual mock-up looked considerably different, but it's a holy grail kit for a lot of people because you just can't find them. But I thought that one definitely caught my eye because to me it just looked like something that it would belong in an Italian science fiction movie. I did have a close-up photo of it. Okay, the next picture you'll see here shortly. I zoomed in on this a little bit. I'm not sure what some of the stuff is, but one of the things they had was the $6 million man fighting the gorilla. And below that are some Japanese cars, I think. It looks like it might be LS. But you've got a fairly eclectic mix here of stuff. I think, who was it? Was it NPC or AMT did the $6 million man? I forget. But
I think the name is Fundimensionals.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. And
now, I also see in the corner there you have an XSL01.
Uh-oh. Steve's radar just went off.
That Mark.
Are we looking at the same picture?
Yes. This is the one with the $6 million man and the.
What part of the screen am I trying to find in XS1?
So two over from the $6 million man kit.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's like it has like 4 booster rockets around the perimeter of it. Yeah.
I thought that was a Bloodhound missile.
That's another old kit. Yeah, I guess it's 50s.
I see it.
Late 50s. Yeah.
Let me zoom in on that a little bit as best I can. I didn't tell you, Mark, we proudly advertise the lowest production values on the internet. Okay, it's actually pointing down, but you know what? I think that is the XSL01.
Yeah.
You two are going to have to talk about that. I mean, after the show's over, because I know, Steve, you've been waiting for him to repop that thing.
Yeah.
And
right, it's right next to that mobile launcher vehicle, military ground-based vehicle.
Yeah, I think that might be an Honest John. What? There's something to the right of it, which is like a horse. The yellow and red.
It's a quadruped missile.
Yeah.
It's one room over. I can go over and grab it, but I just don't remember what the heck the horse is. It might just be a random toy I stuck in there because it was the right size, It's sort of like making one of those Aztec walls where you have to,
it's like playing Tetris.
Just so. But yeah.
No, that's
there's
that's
like
okay.
a little machine gun in the green boxes that shoots little plastic bullets, and Yeah, just random stuff. Yeah.
And you got a Rube Goldberg kit.
Yes, which
Is that what that is?
God help me, why did I buy that? I mean, it's such a it's like
Is that the one above the
I'm
$6 million man?
looking at it.
Is that the one above the $6 million man?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, what the heck is? I wasn't gonna really waste time on it. I was like, what the heck is that thing?
It's like a Rube Goldberg was the theme.
Okay.
I think, wasn't it? Rube Goldberg type stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was
They made a whole range of kits, and there were all these Rube Goldberg type contraptions that when you put them together, you turned a crank and it did things, and
Okay.
They had a whole line of them.
Is that Maestro toy? I'm not. Anyway. Okay. Well, all right. Well, that was. I had seen that, and I was like, I have no idea what that is, but there's so much to cover here. We'll just move on to the next slide. I mean, we could spend all night on any one of these pictures. Well, this is just yep, that is the XS. Oh, you're right, it is. Okay, so now this particular one is one of the only ones I did a zoom on, because in there, okay. Oh, I just noticed to the left you have the Lindbergh commercial SST by TWA. But what I was looking at was you got that Revell F-102 Delta Dagger with all the ground equipment.
Yes.
That's another thing that's really hard to find. They've actually repopped that Allison turboprop. I can remember as a kid, I just built that SR-71 recently, and I remember as a kid, that Avro Dambuster Lancaster, I remember I was in Panama City, Florida at an apartment store back when department stores carried models, and looking at that thing, I was about 8, 9, 10 years old. My God, I wanted it so bad. That's Jack Linwood artwork, and it just the artwork, man. It's the action. It made me want to buy that thing so bad. But that F-102 with the F-102 itself isn't hard to find. That kit that has all the ground support equipment, which was a total failure for Revell. Mike Machad has talked about that one at length on his channel and on this channel, because it was like $3.
It was $2.98.
Yeah. And that was just, people weren't going to pay that back then. And I know we laugh at that today, but those of us who are over 50 remember that in those days, $2.98 was about $40, $30.
I remember looking at that kit on the shelf as a kid and going, my God, that is amazing with all that ground equipment.
Yeah.
And, it was like, it would be like buying a car, back then.
Well, and by the way, above it is a SPAD 13. I didn't build that kit, but I am 90% sure my older brother did, because I seem to vividly remember that box art. And I'll make a quick mention that I've made before. When you're a kid, and this is why I think box art is so much better than photos of the model. When my younger brother made an observation, he goes, he and I would spend an hour at the store looking at every model, looking at the box art. He goes, it was like going to the movies.
Yeah.
Because these things told a story. And I tell you, the importance of box art cannot be overestimated.
Well, box art sold a kit to me today. I told you the story.
Oh, yeah.
Before.
You just bought that, what was it, F-117?
Bought a 48 scale Tamiya F-117 kit. And they had some armor, Tamiya armor, and they had a couple of Tamiya car kits, and they had them all sitting on edge, so you could look at the front of the boxes. And I just looked at that F-117 and I said, I gotta buy this.
Box art sold another one.
Yeah. Max?
Yeah.
I take it the message you put on the screen is something you're trying to tell me.
What? I mean, what?
I have in my notes here that you're Max wants the F-102, right?
Now here's the thing: if that's complete and somehow I am able to acquire it, I'm almost guaranteed not to build it. It goes on my stack of the 9 kits that I have that I simply will not build, which makes it a white elephant. But it's like I say, it's in the having.
That's okay. If you want to, set it on fire and blow it up with firecrackers, it's your thing. It's okay. If you buy something from me, God bless you. You can do whatever you want with it. It's perfectly fine. It's okay. We're all right. You don't have to to swear you're not going to build it or keep it inviolate for the foreseeable future. It's okay.
I had a gentleman who I know he refused to sell some of his kits unless the person swore they would never build it. I was like, there's no way to enforce that. He goes, it just makes me feel better. So this car, this is a Japanese kit of an Impala, and it's 1/25th scale. I don't recognize is it Hasegawa? I can't make it out, but that's a slot car.
You're right. Hasegawa took that tooling that I think originally they made for this slot car. You can see it's got the aluminum chassis on the upper part of the red background, and then there's like a little Mabuchi motor in a little black and white packaging to the left. This was totally a slot car, and then it was a slammer model. In other words, there's no, it has no engine detail. The hood doesn't open.
Right.
But they took this tooling for the Buick Wildcat and the Impala and maybe the Galaxy, maybe even a Thunderbird, like a 66 Thunderbird that's also behind it there too, and issued it as a static kit without much detail for decades and decades. I mean, it might even be still made today, but they seem to run that tooling to my knowledge, for 4 decades that I'm aware of.
If they're selling,
here's a box art like conundrum. Look at the kit in the box, which it looks like a 65 Impala. Look at the kit on the box art, or the car in the box art. It doesn't look anything like that.
Well, wait, you're talking about the picture with the Impala?
Yes.
Okay, what you're saying, that the car doesn't look like the box art?
I'm saying that the car in the box, which looks just like a 65 Impala, does not look like the car in the box. The grille is different. The front is different. The roof is different. That's some kind of car that's not an Impala, or it might not be an Impala in the United States.
It might be a Japanese Impala. I mean,
yeah, because that doesn't look anything like what's in the box.
It's close enough. It's not a generic rendering. Each box has a different rendering. Like behind you can see the Wildcat, and you can see 2 of the Thunderbirds. And actually, and it might be because I'm holding the box askance at sort of an oblique angle, is distorting a little bit. But I think the bigger issue is that you got some, a poor set upon commercial illustrator in Japan saying, paint this car, and he's never seen one in his life.
That is exactly what I was thinking.
And it's like, okay, boss, I'll do it. I mean, you see it these days when you're seeing commercial art coming out of China of like classic era American cars, and it's like, gee, come on, they're just off, and not in subtle ways sometimes. Yeah.
Well, what's funny, you should mention that, because and you're right about the artist, but the art director calls the shots, and Mike Machat had commented many times how the art director for the company gets to determine what the artist does, and it's very likely that this is what he wanted. This was his vision. And like you say, he doesn't care about the car. He cares about what his art looks like. Now you have a lot of the,
and he's signing off on it too.
Exactly.
The other interesting thing about this car, just a quick one, is after the slot car phenomena crashed and burned, the first reissue they did of this car was a penlight version with the 2 little AA penlight batteries. It was a model kit. They got rid of the metal chassis in effect, and put like the little battery box and a little 1.5 volt throwaway motor in it to make it and of course that was common with like a lot of your 60s and 70s even Japanese kits, where they would have batteries in it in the kit, for play value, I guess.
Exactly.
Yep. So I saw you went to the rocket picture next.
Yeah, we're going to that next. You have a surprisingly good stock of largely Revell, Aurora, and looks like Heller spacecraft. Well, I think that may be a snark, but missiles, rockets, I mean, cool stuff. So
Steve has. Oh, there it is. Okay, I see the picture.
and you have a lot of repeats on this one, more than the other shows.
Cold War era stuff. I mean, you got all that. Saber rattling between the East and the West at that time, and am I correct in saying that maybe a fair percentage of the tooling for these items was underwritten by the companies making those missiles?
I wouldn't doubt it. I know that did happen from time to time, but I don't know about any specific cases. But it wouldn't surprise me. At a minimum, these companies probably would have given the access or sent them the drawings.
Yes, yeah.
And they would have had to pay them a license to make them.
Well, not necessarily, because I do know there were times when that was done. I think the X-13 was one, the Vertijet. And okay. Revell made the big one. They cut the mold. They blew they shot the test shots. Then their marketing people said it's not going to sell, so they just canned it, which is a shame because they'd gone through 90% of the expense. And Ryan was pushing them to do it, so Ryan went to who made the X-13 kit? I forget. I don't think it was Aurora, but anyway, whoever made it, Ryan basically just gave them all the drawings and all the permissions. They didn't pay them for it. But they gave me all the drawings. They said there was a kit made. It might have been Aurora. They had way more in the way of engineering drawings because you remember Aurora was famous for making kit models out of a couple of photographs in a magazine. Andy Yanchel was talking about he went to the De Tomaso Mangusta, for the slot car. That Joe Giammarino walks up with a magazine. There's 2 photos of the car. Hey, Andy, can you make this? Sure, boss.
There's another F-108 up there.
Oh, is there?
Yep. Look on top, above the Atlas.
Oh, you've got good eyes. Well done. Oh, all right.
Oh. And the bottom part of the bottom middle is kind of like the Nick Argento Memorial Fund.
All the Strombeckers and everything.
Yeah, the Strombecker stuff.
Mike, have you ever talked to or met Nick Argento?
Yeah, which is sort of nice. I mean, you actually have a company promoting space travel vehicles, not tools of destruction.
Yeah,
it's kind of nice. The stars are our future. Versus
well, it's funny you mention that because
a smoking radioactive hole in the ground.
It's funny you should mention that because, and it's in the book, the Revell book, they talk about this. But Lou Glazer, who ran Revell, and later his wife Royal. I mean, Royal went to Berkeley. These were not warmongers by any stretch of the imagination, and they invested heavily in educational toys. But they actually got cornered on more than one occasion by people going, well, why do you make so many war toys? And Lou just told them point blank, I'm sorry, but that is what sells, and we have to keep the doors open. We simply can't make a living. It's just, this is what boys want to build models of. And personally, I like to build everything. But in my love of history is behind why I build so much military stuff. Just to touch on a rather sensitive subject around here, as a lot of the glue troopers know, I got a hate speech strike recently for a video I made months ago. All it was the Tamiya 135th scale Panther tank. And when I did the reveal at the end, I was playing, the German tanker song, the Panzerlied in the background. And they took it down and gave me a hate speech strike. And I tried to appeal it, and they came back and said, nope, it's hate speech. I'm like, that's still the German tanker song today. It's not a political song. But that's the kind of lack of understanding of history.
When you look at a lot of these kits that we are looking at now, that go back to the mid to late 50s, I would say, just in what we've been discussing so far. Yeah. A lot of that stuff was popular because we were coming out of the war. We were educated about the war. There were lots of, in the burgeoning medium of television, shows about the war, documentaries about the war. We were taught about it in school, so we wanted to build these things because we saw them.
But don't forget, every one of us knew people who had fought in the war, if it wasn't even members of our own family.
Right.
You know,
And
so we did have a connection with it. People build what they have. I think people build. Go ahead.
This is stuff we saw in the paper every day and in magazines, because they were testing the X-planes. They were coming up with new missiles. They were talking about going to outer space. You had the Collier series. You had the Disney rockets, which was the
Tomorrowland and Frontierland, and
Well, you know, this is stuff that was part of our everyday sort of, you know, environment.
Well,
so hey, you saw that and you read about it. I'd like to build that. Well, here Revell came out with this. Aurora came out with that. Monogram came out with that, and you built this stuff.
In fact, Mark, you made a comment in the video about the Viking ship, and that about a year after it came out, they made the movie The Vikings, and then of course those models started flying off the shelf because they did a tie-in with them. You know, there is a direct connection between the silver screen, television, or I should say media in general, and what we select to build. People tend to, in my opinion, people build what's part of their life. Everybody, I think the reason cars are the number one selling thing is because everybody has cars in their life. Everybody can relate to them. And then this other stuff is you build either what is in your life or what you want to be in your life. And all of us as kids wanted to be astronauts. So all this space stuff was incredibly exciting.
Meanwhile, they talk about that pirate ship, the Viking ship, in the Graham book about Revell, about Aurora.
Yep.
They knew they were going to come out with the movie. They didn't want to pay the license. So they figured if they turn around and come out with a Viking kit
before the
would
movie,
sell.
And by getting it out before the movie, they you know. Oh, by the way, speaking of the Graham books, Mark, you want to talk about Graham, who wrote all those books? You helping him?
Well, I don't have a lot of deep history on it, but a number of years ago, maybe pushing 15 years ago now, Tom Graham had made, I believe, 2 visits to my house. And the time I didn't have as much then as I do now, but I had some illustrations, and I know he was keen on. One of his books was about box art from American kit companies, a lot of aircraft and stuff. And I think he might have taken some pictures of some gift sets or store displays I have also. So he did come by and had his camera and shot a few things I had a couple of times, and very gracious man, and put a credit in the book for me, and it was very nice. Yeah, but I don't have much other anecdotal stories about him. No.
Well, that just says that a lot about, because his books are kind of the holy grails on information about these companies, and the fact that you provided him with some resources says a great deal about the thoroughness of your collection. And here we have more art. I don't know what these things above the creature from the Black Lagoon are, but I don't know if they're Woozies or something.
Those were a series made by Lindbergh when they were in Skokie, Illinois. It was 1964, and there's actually, I don't know if you can pull back out on it a little bit. Don't close in. Go the other way if possible. But there's a total of 4, and they were called Repulsives, and I think it was Lindbergh's shot at trying to go against all the waves that Aurora was making, doing the TV, the movie monsters, right?
Yeah.
I think they came out with Frankenstein in '61. But here, that's better. Yeah, you can see the yellow fellow with the big mouth. You can see the eyeball with the mace in his hands, and then to the right of that, there's a couple of the kits, and there's 2 more pieces of art. There's a total of 4. Those are like little. I think the kits sold for 29 or 39 cents. They were tear open boxes. It wasn't a lift off box. It was very inexpensive, and they only used that art 1 year. After that, they kind of went to a more of a cartoony art that was very. It looked very slapdash. It didn't have the clarity of these, which were made by a guy with some talent, and as far as being an illustrator. But as far as I can tell, just chronologically, it was their answer to the fabulous success that Aurora was doing. Like you have Hawk that came out with the
Weirdos
series.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I have Flame Out Freddy on the shelf.
and it would have went along.
What on the shelf?
I have Flame Out Freddy on the shelf.
The Starliner?
No, Flame Out Freddy. You were talking about the weirdos that have Flame Out Freddy on the shelf. On my no. Right, on my shelf. I mean, I built. Somebody gave me one. By the way, upper left, the Star Lifter. That's what my brother was a crew member on when he was in the Air Force. And you got the artwork to go with it.
That would have fit in also with the Ratfink stuff that Ravel.
Yeah. You had Big Daddy Roch. So here we have some, I guess, boats and fire trucks. I'm not really. You guys will be a few seconds before you see it. Look what's up at the top of the picture there, Steve. When it changes over, it's got to do its little zoom. Recognize what's up top above the fire trucks?
Okay. Yeah, they're just ladder trucks or hose trucks. AMT, early 70s. What's interesting there, though, is the Spirit of America above them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, the Sonic 1.
Yeah, that was a four-wheel car, not the three-wheel one, yeah.
Yep.
That's, I didn't know the Japanese made a kit of it.
Did I? Neither did I. And as a matter of fact, Keeler made one out of a block of wood.
Hand carved. It became the pattern.
Yeah. We have to talk about that too, Mark.
Well, we'll move on.
Making that car out of a block of wood?
No, we got to talk about that kit. My wife will. Good thing she's not anywhere near this.
If you go to the left of that Spirit of America car and turn the corner, there's a box that says Bluebird. And what that is, that's a boat. Now, follow me on this one. That was by Merritt out of Britain.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that was a speed record boat, okay? The Bluebird.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Campbell was
the one he
the
died
pilot
in
on that boat. Yeah. And to my understanding, sadly enough, he died trying to make a record with that boat.
Yes, he did.
I might be totally full of it here, but
no, that's
a
true.
lot of Merritt kits went on to have continued reissues. That boat, from what I can tell, was made once, and I believe they stopped making it after the death of Donald Campbell.
That sounds reasonable.
What's the box that says?
There you go. That's it. And it's molded in blue. I'm making sort of a jump of assumption and logic here, or not logic, just opinion and guess would be more appropriate. But that's sort of an interesting kit, and not a badly made kit. Also for that time.
I've made several Merritt kits. I have a gentleman that lives in the next town from me who was at one point in his career, a professional race car driver. And he lived in Europe for many years. And he had a collection of Merritt kits that he built way back in the 50s. And he had me restore them for him. And let me tell you, they were really fine kits for the time that they were built. I mean, they're very good kits.
And Steve?
What's in the box next to it that says 2 Bluebirds?
Hang on. A second Bluebird. Where is it on?
It's right to the left of the Bluebird. It says 2 Bluebirds.
Left of the Bluebird boat, there's a box that says 2 Bluebirds on it with a yellow.
Yes, yeah. That's those are very crude vehicles that have the little jet engine stuffed up the behind of them.
Okay.
And I think they're like just simple foam. They're not even a kit as much as just like a foam block or something, or one-piece plastic. And one's a wheeled vehicle and one's the boat. And I think it comes with one JetX little, or whatever the brand was, a solid propellant fuel little rocket thing, like a inch and a half, 2 inches long, the motor. But
pay attention.
I'll send you guys pictures of that though, just for fun though.
Okay.
Bluebirds times 2. Okay.
Yeah. Steve. When we're done here, I want you to just take a blank check and sign it, make a list, and just mail it to Mark. Okay. The fellow who did this video, I saved this picture because I remember the fellow who did the video here for you. That was something that he had a connection with, was the American Space Program set, which I think you said was like a Christmas time thing.
He did get that kit from me. He did.
Okay.
Although I'm ashamed to say that I pulled it out to show it to him, and he pointed out, "Oh, it's incomplete," and it was. I think it was missing, like what the kid is holding in his hand there, the
command
stage
module
of the missile or something. So unfortunately, it was kind of sad because the box was nice, and the parts that were there, I think, were bagged. But at any rate, it was something had been spirited off. But nevertheless, Rich did get it, and he did seem keen on it. Yes.
Well, that was, of course, you can buy all those, and he could always buy the kit elsewhere and put it in the bag, in the box if he wanted to complete it. Now, that looks like Steele's artwork, I'm not sure, but this is another set, and you have the original art to it here. This is the 3 ships. I know. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead because it hasn't cycled to you yet. It's the 3 ships, the carrier and the 2 escort vessels.
Right. Yeah, that's the Naval Academy by Revell, 1950s issue. Would any of you venture to take a guess of who the artist is? Because I couldn't find a signature.
I want to say Steele.
Yeah, I think it's Steele, huh?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
It's got his like color palettes and everything. Mike would probably know. And you know what? If we go to the box art den, I'll bet they'll have it. But I want to say it was Steele, and but I'm taking a stab in the dark at that one. And he did a lot of military stuff like that because I think he'd been a U.S. Marine. So you kind of you draw what you know.
And he was an artist in the Pacific.
And so here we go with I know the Phantom Mustang on the right and the monster scene. I mean on the left and the monster scene's on the right. I'm not sure what this roller coaster thing is in the middle. That was a new one on me.
Oh, it's just a pre-war tin-type toy. It's not a model kit at all. It has a wind-up motor in it, and it has like there's like a little string with knots in it, and the little carriage, the little roller coaster piece hooks on. It gets pulled to the top of the apex of the ride, then it uses gravity to come down.
Okay.
You know what it is?
It's got a plane that flies around.
It's a Marx. It's an inexpensive Marx knockoff of a German toy. Okay, the Germans did a lot of pre-war stuff and some post-war stuff like that, where it was like a little tin track that had height changes, hills and stuff. But the German stuff worked. The Marx one, it's a nice thought, but it's a suggestion of a roller coaster working, but you can never quite get it to work. Yeah.
I assume we'll cancel
nice
the show.
Photography on it, though. Nice looking toy. Yeah.
Now the steam, you'll see it again. I've got the picture where it says the looks like a steamboat. I think you said it was a pyro kit. And what looks like a Jagdpanther with a custom paint job.
Oh yes, one of that's the name of my old shop, and one of my employees at the time, he must have done that 20 years ago, and it was tucked away in the shadows and dust for decades, and I just unearthed it like in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and. He decided to paint it zinc chromate primer or whatever that yellow color is, and put a couple of my shop stickers on it. I think he built that probably in the 1990s,
Mm.
and yeah, I've been meaning to give it to him because I had lost track of it for probably 25 years. Found it last month, and yeah, he's. I'll have to forward it to him at some point. He'll get a kick out of it. Yes.
That's the Robert E. Lee Revell kit in the store display.
Are you sure it's not the Pyro?
The paddle wheeler, the steamboat.
Yeah, that's the Revell kit.
I don't think it's Revell. I think it's Pyro, isn't it?
No, it's Revell.
Uh-oh. I hear the gauntlet hitting the floor.
All right, hit scale, mates.
All right, everybody. All you guys out there, go
I'm
see if that's a
10
Pyro or if
sticker.
that's a
Look at the
Revell.
sticker. Hang on.
You're going to be so embarrassed if he comes back with a sticker that says Pyro.
I will be, yeah. It won't be the first time.
The paddle wheel with the clear top and the blue base is definitely Pyro.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, it is Pyro. Because I think the Revell one you're thinking of is a smaller boat. This is fairly large. I mean, you can kind of, yeah, it's
See from the box
I
underneath.
think the Revell one is smaller, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Drama on the live stream. Ha
Yeah, and the vacuum form base, the blue base is like a piece of vacuum form plastic, which is somewhat fragile. Yeah, I don't think Revell used vacuum form bases to my knowledge.
They were cardboard.
Mm. Well, that's we've all learned something new today. This is a learning moment. Okay, now here we have some more artwork, and this has got to be Aurora because that's the caveman and the saber-toothed cat. I don't know about the cars. I do recognize the Aurora end panels of the tanks on the left because I just built that JS3 the other day, courtesy of a glue trooper who sent me a repop of it. And so, again, I gather you just collected this through your...
Yeah. The center two pieces, you know, the caveman with the spear and the saber-toothed tiger, you know, threatening the people. Those are both Aurora prehistoric scenes. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're both originals, right?
Is like a Bonneville car in blue. That was by Bill Campbell.
Okay.
And on the upper left, that white concept car is by a Detroit stylist. The last name is Renner with an R. Renner. And it's, you know, the 50s era, you know, jet powered, whatever the hell it is. Probably a styling exercise for GM, I'm thinking. But that was out of Detroit. That was from something out of Detroit styling studio. The rendering, the illustration. I don't believe they ever made the prototype car of that particular one.
Those Bonneville kits, the Hawk ones.
Which one again?
The Bonneville kits, the Hawk ones that you have the box
right,
there.
Right, Campbell. There's a blue one and a red one. The blue one's at Bonneville, and the red one's more of a sports car presentation. Yeah. And
they had a rubber band in there, and you could wind it up, and it would make it go.
It had 5 rubber bands. It had one rubber band to power it, and because the wheels were injection molded hard plastic wheels, they came with little rubber bands to put around the perimeter of the wheel
to give it traction.
Drive, as opposed to just being styrene plastic spinning on the ground. So it actually came with one bigger rubber band for power and 4 small rubber bands to go around the wheels, the hard wheels, so they would actually work. But yeah, you're right. It is rubber band, and they've been reissued in the last decade, I think, with some.
Yes, I believe they have.
Different art. Yeah.
Now,
I had those when I was a kid. I used to love putting them on the floor and racing them against each other.
Oh yeah. But I built one too. Yeah, probably 9 years old or whatever. Yeah.
Eric over.
Whoever painted those prehistoric scenes art certainly had a thing for snakes.
Yeah, he did. Well, they're probably a favorite dessert. Eric over at Celebrating Vintage Model Kits was pointing the XF90 up at the top here. Do you know which kit that is? I don't recognize the box art offhand.
The airplane?
Yeah, up at the very top.
Or the bug? Well, the Baja Bug one?
Yeah, the very top.
No, the XF90.
The XF90, the jet at the very top left.
The airplane, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know whose kit that was?
I want to say Comet. Just give me one Just give me like 3 seconds.
Okay. We're not going anywhere.
I'm back, guys. That kit, it's not Comet, it's Hawk. And the plane is a Lockheed F-90.
Yep. Okay.
And, yeah, it looks like a 50 series kit.
Yep.
It sold for 98 cents. I'm not seeing a year code on it. But yeah, no, that's a good size box. It, you know, and yeah, that's yeah, got the 1/4 scale.
I'm sorry, you
48 scale, right?
I'm sorry, you said it was Hawk.
48 scale, right? And yeah, but
I'm sorry, you said it.
yeah,
You said
I
it
can
was.
send you a picture of the box if you guys want on that.
You said it was Hawk.
Hawk, yeah.
Okay. Quick piece of trivia.
F-90, yeah.
That was one of Hawk's first two kits. That and the Navy Panther were the first two injected molded models they made, styrene models. And they're the ones that Aurora copied and got in trouble for because they basically just did a direct copy.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Andy was telling me about that.
And
Yeah,
did the Aurora copy have a hinged box top where you didn't lift off, it actually hinged open?
I don't know. They went through the early ones. Might have been end opening boxes, but I'm not sure. I've seen pictures of the box, but I don't know if they actually handled one. Now, but Aurora, I talked to Andy Anches about that because I said, yeah, I heard that Hawk kind of gave him a gentleman's agreement, don't do it again. And Andy went, no, they didn't. They sued him. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize it got that serious. So what's the story on the Eldon made these bottles and boats and bottles? Is that just something you bought and put on the shelf? I mean, nothing to build?
Well, there were some, I forget who, there was an American company, one or two companies that did a model kit that you built inside a bottle.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't a real bottle. It came with like a plastic knockoff of like a pop bottle. And of course the bottom removed or something. So it was not a, you know,
wasn't a true ship on a bottle.
Horribly hard. It wasn't as hard as saying as trying to go to the small end of the bottle. But these are just, I don't know. The bottle opens up. I think the back of it opens up, and you take the little toy boat out and you put it in the bathtub or a pond. So it doesn't have much play value. I think it's more just the gimmick that, you know, you can, you know, here's a boat in a bottle you don't have to build.
Huh.
And by the way, you can take it out, and you know your 6-year-old or 5-year-old or whatever can play with it in the tub.
Okay.
So
more
Eldon
toy than a
was
model.
so prolific in the toys they made. I mean, they just had a vast array of toys. I mean, I think at some point they were doing pretty well. But yeah.
Meanwhile, they did what in slot cars?
They did slot cars, but they did like, you know, large plastic toys of various types, and they were. I got some of their 60s era catalogs, and it was like, Jesus. I mean, they're just, you know, I think the slot cars were a diversion for them, but they, I think in more classic, like, plastic toys, I think they did pretty well, in the mid-range stuff.
Billy Blastoff was.
I had Billy Blastoff.
Yeah. Okay.
I had that as a kid. I love that. By the way, how on earth did you come across this intact store display fully stocked?
You know, I've been probably found it at think back 10, 20, 30 years ago when the vintage toy shows were actually something special. You know? Stuff like that would turn up at the Kane County show happened 2 or 3 times a year, and there was a time when every table was a wonder. You know, every table you looked at, and it was a huge show. And or the shows in Toledo going back 20 years, you know, for automotive model kits and toys in general. I mean, you had that period where, you know, the vintage toy shows, you know, the product was still being unearthed from old hobby shops, old toy stores, you know, caches of stuff that, you know, a mom and pop shop probably closed back in the 50s, early 60s, and this, they took their leftover merchandise and put it in their basement, and then, 20 years later, somebody digs it all out and, walks away with it for, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it all out. Here's a couple $100,
Yeah, exactly.
And people were just coming out with vast amounts of new old stock stuff. Lithographed tin in the original box, store displays, gasoline-powered rail racers prior to the plastic gas toys. If you look at the 1980s and 90s, it was still kind of a wonderland, and as far as the caliber, the quality, and the quantity of vintage toys that were coming to the big shows. The shows where there were buyers. People were coming from Japan and Europe to a swap meet. In mid-America, in Kane County Toy Show, west of Chicago, I would see people there from Europe, from Japan, as buyers and sellers both. But yeah, stuff like that would turn up, and it would be odd enough, and $150. Okay, I'll take it. Sure, whatever.
Okay, How many people remember the Revell Model of the Month Club?
Yeah, I do. And you used to be in the club where you'd get stamps with each kit.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd save the stamps.
Be the first kid in your neighborhood to have the whole collection.
And be the first kid in the neighborhood to have a Mercury capsule sent to the local science center.
Oh, yeah. That was a Gemini. It was actually a training capsule. And it was pretty authentic, though, because it's what they did their procedures training in. And we're seeing a lot of Aurora stuff here. And okay, you ended up yet another store display. And I don't know if it came fully stocked, because some of those models have later box art on them, obviously. But I'm sure this Aurora store display was the kind of thing that, would just, the display would stay. They would just put the new models in, so the mixed box art would actually be completely accurate. I see the old ones, the Famous Fighter series that's got to be, late 50s?
Well, the picture that's up now?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, some of those are 50s kits. I mean, some of them have the swastika on the tail section of the German planes.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting about that is what my hand is touching. That's a lithographed metal piece.
That's the part I was actually more interested in, was the rack.
and it says, you can read it in the picture, it says Famous Fighters Aurora.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a wire rack that, you could load up with models, and it could be a cigar store, a five and dime store, that would be their model section would be that one wire rack, and next to ribbons or pots or something.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the whole shooting match for little stores. And
here's a question for you. Did you buy
rack?
that rack?
A quick story about that rack. I didn't know how to turn a computer on, like in 1998, 1999. Someone took pity on me and showed me how to turn on a computer. And by later that year, I had fallen prey to buying vintage toys on eBay. And probably the first year I'm into it, like 99, 2000, I see that rack. It's being sold in California, and the guy won't ship it. So, and this is back in the day where you could actually talk, like you could get a person's name and phone number off of eBay and call them directly. So I called the guy and I say, I'd really like to buy it, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to ship it. And I said, okay. I said, could you give me the dimensions? He says, why? He says, well, if you give me the dimensions, I'll make a box of the right size. I'll mail you the empty box with a shipping label for return. He said, okay. So I made the damn box. I think it's like a bicycle box, and cut it down, shipped it to him. He stuffed it in there, and I got it back. And it's just like one of those wonderful stories from the early days of eBay before they got all
weird,
all nervous that we're not making our 13% cut on every possible sale. sort of thing. But at any rate, I'll stop talking about eBay.
I have a
What's the
question.
story on that rack? I'm just one of my fonder memories. Yes.
Did this rack come empty when you got it from Aurora, or did you buy it as a pre-done assortment?
Oh, it was empty. It was stone empty. The
Okay.
guy I bought it from owned a magazine stand, had a little magazine shop, and he was like putting pocketbooks or girly magazines or something on it, okay? He wasn't in a hobby shop. He was using it to sell magazines or whatever type he was pushing. That's why he had it. Because, I mean, in 1999, that thing had been around
20 years?
40, 45 years already, It was, it wasn't contemporary anymore when I bought it, for sure, yeah.
You're lucky you bought it from
I
him, because if it had been from a model collector, I'm sure you would have won a lot more money for it.
Yeah, it's, what what I've done with that, I am selling stuff as and when it comes to that rack, I've had 2 or 3 people ask about it, and because I'm still sort of attached to it, I would sell it, and I say, if you want to buy it, it would be all the kits, and the price would be commensurate with that. And at that point, the conversation stops. So far, it may change. Who knows? Maybe someone will say it, and I want it just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know why I have that kit open, but there you go.
You were just showing it to him.
Off the red plastic of, when Aurora used to do stuff in really vivid colors just for appeal to a 7-year-old boy sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure the Germans didn't paint their airplanes red since the Red Baron got shot down. Here we got the custom car part.
The Japanese heroes weren't yellow? Okay.
Not for long.
There you go with the custom car parts thing. That was a wonderful product. I think they did well with that. They sold that product for several years, and those little individual packs of motors or chassis or bubble tops or tires or motorcycles, they sold from 49 to 89 cents each. And they were the perfect hop up hot rod customizing little bits and pieces for your model kit.
Yep.
A nice merchandiser with that.
That is a nice looking display. It is.
Effect it has, yeah.
You're going to see them again.
I've heard a similar rumor. Yes, wonderful.
Well, when I was at I think it was JaxCon recently, there was this husband and wife team. They had their daughter working there too, and they had all these. I don't know if they were. I think they were 3D printed engines, and they had hundreds of them. I'm like, what do you need you need a V8 for a 64 Polera? Here we go. And I was like, holy crap! It's really getting hard to compete with that. I saw this and I had to stop because I had that Cox powered Stuka, which was an extreme. We never got it through a full flight without crashing it. I mean, it was really a squirrel to fly. The airplane below it, I guess that's the Comet or the Glencoe or the Viscount. I think I can't really tell, but I just noticed up above the Cox aircraft, you have this little blue Navy tracker, the little blue twin-engine airplane. My brother had that artwork on his wall along with 100 others, and I always remember it's one of those things just stuck in my head. Is that.
Are you talking about towards the top of the screen? Little,
on the left, the little blue Navy twin-engine airplane. Yeah, he's taking off a carrier. It's a Grumman tracker, and I was just like, it was just one of those 69-cent kits that he bought that he put the box art up on his wall, and I'd always go down his room just stare at all the box art, and that's one of them that just seared into my memory.
That's an Aurora kit, is that right?
Yep, that's an Aurora. That's right. And
I have that. Well, two things about that. You can't see it in the frame, but on the ceiling above that, I have the original illustration of that. Number one. Number two, Aurora, with identical box art, made that same aircraft with that same, once again, the same image on the box in two different scales.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And I think that might be the smaller one up there. And I have
that's
both.
a small one. Yes.
And it was like, okay, you liked it so much you made it twice with the same box art. So it was cool.
In fact, that's in some weird little box scale, like I forget 1:86 or 1:9. I forget what it is. It's and the other one was like 172 or 148, a much more conventional scale. And that's right. Yes. I completely forgot about that. They absolutely did. And there's your WinMac P38. It's fun enough flying a U-control airplane with one engine when you got to get two of them going.
You mentioned the WinMac P38, right? You know that's a plane with two gas engines, right?
That's what I was just saying. It's a U-control airplane with the two lines, and it had two. And I used to fly U-control with one engine, thus like the Stuka. Actually, my brother would fly. My dad wouldn't let me fly, and he knew what he was doing. He still crashed it because it was so tricky. But to get two of those little WinMac engines or Cox engines going, and get them all, the Neil valve set, because they had those glow plugs in them that were, I can sit back, close my eyes, and I can remember the smell of that weird fuel they used. And have it all over my fingers, get all over the airplane would come down, be all greasy from all of it, because it's just a glorified two-stroke engine. The memories. And God help you, that engine could go either way. You could crank it and get the prop going backwards. I backed him up more than once, and every once in a while you try to throw it, you wouldn't pull the prop through hard enough. The piston would bounce, come back down before it finished a compression stroke. Go back up, fire going the wrong way. And man, it's just God. We really grew up in the Overton window of cool toys. We had all the cool toys due to advances in technology, but we didn't have helicopter moms or anything. So I noticed, by the way, here in one of your prehistoric scenes that you made a very interesting alteration to it. You added a very interesting character. You had put the Wolfman with the mammoth, and I'm like, here it comes. You got the Wolfman fighting the mammoth, and I'm like, that's like something out of the Valley of Guanji. That is a movie.
Yeah, I have the Wolfman trying to tussle with the mastodon's tusks or something.
And the first thing when I saw that, though,
what you're seeing there is a dilemma of not enough real estate. Okay,
sure.
Running out of space and cramming a couple of 2 or 3 bits and pieces into a store display that weren't with it. So,
but it works. When I saw that, the first thing that went through my mind is that is a Roger Corman movie or an AIP movie that I would pay you to go see. Wolfman versus the woolly mammoth. I mean, why not? They had him fighting Frankenstein. They had him fighting Godzilla. I mean, Wolfman versus the woolly mammoth. Wolfman goes back in time, I love it. That would be a Roger Corman film or an AIP movie so fast.
Yes.
They work. I mean, it has a coherent feel. Now, here's a bunch of your store displays, but we're going to run out of time before we run out of slides. Here's a really beautiful set of really nice store displays. I think that's a Nike Ajax and a couple of tanks and some artillery.
Right. Yes. On that one. Okay. Can you see the shelf? Okay. There's the upper shelf has like the albatross on it. Okay. The seaplane.
Yep.
Good. See it. You can't see the shelf above it, though, can you?
No, that's the whole photo right there.
Okay. Yeah, no. We've got some Renwall stuff, and we've got some Revell stuff, and just even an odd Stromberger plane there, which is like a solid wood plane on a little red base for 69 cents.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no,
what's that little circuit
those are all, just to clarify, none of these are reprinted store displays. I know some folks have done reprints on the cardboard, some verbatim and some speculative or imaginary. But these are all original cardboard and the original model that was built by the manufacturer for the display. And I really like any of the store display that has cardboard presentation with it. And I can it's easy to identify if it's genuine or not. Versus someone who's just laser printed up a piece of paper and glued it onto a cardboard back. It's not the real thing and all that.
Right.
But Mark, what's that little wagon in the upper left-hand shelf?
And what did you call it? A little what?
Wagon?
It's like a little wagon, like a little carnival wagon.
It's like a circus wagon, I think. It's either a circus or a gypsy wagon.
Okay.
I think it's Revell, or one of the companies Revell bought out. I think I could be wrong. I think it's Revell, but it's like either a circus wagon or medicine man wagon, gypsy wagon, some sort of sketchy situation where you got a guy,
Drink my elixir.
Here's all it is. A worn-out horse and a brightly colored wagon, basically. Yeah.
Selling medicine and other things.
So here's on a large scale.
That's the big 8 scale, 32. Yeah.
And
we're gonna have to have you and Phil are gonna have to have a cage match showdown.
There you
go. Now this is one that Steve had never seen before. You guys will see it in about 10 seconds. You got this Navy Skyray and some other Goodyear blimp, but you've got this store display of a Sherman tank, but it looks like it's coming out of a building. And Steve said he'd never seen that one before. It's a Revell.
Never seen that one before.
Oh, the Sherman tank. Yeah, driving through an archway of a little Italian town or something. Yeah.
Very cool display.
I mean, think about it. The people designing the kits, okay, they realized that the majority of the hobby shops in the 50s and through the 60s were little mom and pop shops, and the only visual impact they have was the small end of the box, right? Not the top of the box, because there's no space to display it that way. Not the side of the box, but the little end of the box, and that's where they put the price. And at the same time, probably the same guys were somewhat involved with designing store displays, which is like, hey, you don't have to worry about size constraints as much. This is a marketing tool. We're going to give them away or sell them at a loss to our retailers. They're not designed for resale, and you can make it dynamic. You can have fun with it. You can make it oversized. You can make it you can make stuff like this tank. Where it could be they could have just glued it onto like a press board base. Like some of the Adams and Revell stuff was. But no, they have this sort of like little diorama thing going, and it's just fabulous.
It is. I think you normally had to
sterility, but the limitations of their normal product, which is like, I know we got great box art, but little Johnny will never see it, unless they pull it off the shelf, and the old fart that owns the hobby shop doesn't want the little kid pulling the kid off the shelf. You've been there. If you I know that's the way it was me. I'd go to the hobby shop. Don't take that off the shelf, kid. All right, I'm trying to buy it though, but
Well, I think you got one store display.
Just such a fun time. Absolutely.
Those displays were like the flame to draw a moth in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think somebody told me you got one store display if you ordered a gross of kits. As Eric was just pointing out. I think you bought 144 kits. They threw in a store display. I don't know if you got to pick which one or if they just stuck one in there, but it was excellent. It was excellent marketing, because that is absolutely the kind of thing that would have gotten me to do it. Now here we have the Allosaurus and the Caveman. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting you guys have about a 15-20 second delay. Next slide is the Allosaurus and the Caveman, and which I think you made the comment in your video, the time traveling caveman, or maybe it's just the Valley of Guanji. But I never had any of the model dinosaurs or cavemen or anything, but I know they were extremely popular. And my best friend, when I was like in the second grade, third grade, he loved dinosaurs, Godzilla, King Kong, all that stuff. Vampire movie. He had everything Aurora put out. He had all this stuff, which made it fun to, do sleepovers at his house. Trying to go to sleep with a half dozen glow-in-the-dark monsters staring down at you from the top shelf.
Well, the fascinating. You may have already said this because my hearing's a little fuzzy, but the fascinating thing about this vignette here, the store display, is the time traveling caveman.
Yeah.
I mean, somehow he's mastered going back in time. So kudos to him. I thought that's kind of neat. I made the same comment on a Facebook site. Someone really took me to task for it, by the way, but I won't go any further into that. But yeah, no. The other thing about this, seriously, you look at the early '60s monsters store displays by Aurora. They have no cardboard presentation, right? I mean, you might see Frankenstein, and there's like a little plastic base that came in the kit, but there's no spiel. There's no backdrop and, with the price and, features and, urgency to it. Here, they've gone the other way. They've like made like a full stage here with wings, and the thing is huge, and there's a front at the foot of the thing, which you can't see off the screen. There's a whole linear low strip that has spiel on it too. So you go from Aurora doing their wonderful monsters store displays, but with zero cardboard, to something like this. And it's they're both cool, but it's just crazy. But behind to the left, there is a blunderbuss by Revell with 4 other guns. The 4 other guns in the orange backgrounds are just cardboard reliefs, stapled to maybe a 1/4 inch off the background. But the vertical one is the blunderbuss, and that is actually the model kit. But yeah, it's this huge card displaying a total of 5 different toy guns they made. And once again, you've got a store display that's over the top. I mean, this thing is like it's huge, and it's simultaneously displaying 5 different kits at once. So but
this is the monsters didn't need to have anything to sell them.
Yeah,
I
actually have the picture. This is a little bit bigger. I had done a screen grab. I had to pause it.
You could see all the lower spiel of all the different monsters they made: saber-toothed tiger, flying reptile, Neanderthal man, blah blah blah. But I understand what you're saying, Steve, about the monsters not needing display. But on the other hand, here's something sort of adjacent to monsters. A monster from the past, if you will, a dinosaur, and they've done a full-on deal with it. And yeah.
Well, the reason for
that item is sold, right? But I've had conservatively 10 people ask me for that item, and it's sold for a significant amount of money. It was like, it's a cool piece, and it's going to a good home, and I'm happy with it. And I know I won't find another one, or if I do, I won't want to spend that money. But it's okay. But yeah, I mean the store displays they just strike me as such a wonderful interlude from I like to imagine that the people doing the design work on it and coming up with the ideas realized an amount of freedom with this project that they didn't have in the kits, where they were worried about having, each shelf has to have at least, 36 boxes on it. Each one has to be different. The next shelf, da-da-da-da. We can only go so big with it, And this is like, flies in the face of that entirely. It's wonderful, yeah. But at any rate, there you go. there's that screen again. Yes.
See, the Monster Kids had one thing that the prehistoric scenes didn't have, and that was the fact that the movies of those monsters were playing on television all over the country in the late 50s, early 60s.
Oh, it was a brilliant stroke on Aurora's part. He beat everybody to the punch, and they nailed down the rights for all the Hollywood monsters.
Well, let me tell you.
It was brilliant.
Mark, let me tell you real quick. They actually found out that the copyrights had expired and they were in the public domain, so they did not pay royalties. That's one of the reasons they did them. And I think it's Graham's book, I believe he talks about how they had accidentally onto a situation. You realize that most of these movies were made before World War II. Frankenstein and Dracula, all those were made in the 30s, right? Extremely high production quality, but by the 50s, they dropped in the public domain. Nobody was watching them in theaters anymore, and television was just coming into its own. So, of course, the studios didn't worry about it. What did they care? All of a sudden, these movies wind up in syndication at local stations. Sunday afternoons, kids are watching the Creature feature, which was always these old movies. Aurora, that's where the guys at Aurora, the individual responsible for this, got the idea. They managed to get him to the Frankenstein, 61. Everybody laughs at him at the hymn show until the kids come in on the last day and they all flock to the Aurora table to see Frankenstein. They realize, hey, we are onto something. Next thing you know, they got to make more than one mold of some of the creatures. And like, hey, how many more of these are there? And that's why they got the four. They got Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein, and which one am I brain for? No, the Mummy.
So what you're saying is Aurora did not have to get permission or pay royalties
for the Universal monsters
to Hollywood, to the companies that made the original movies,
because they were all Universal monsters. Now here's what happens. They run these things. They're making millions of dollars off of them. They were running, how was it, 3 million kits a year or something? I forget. It was a lot. I mean, they had to make 2 Godzilla molds, and which came by later, by the way. He came a few years later. And I think 2 Frankenstein molds. And the hyper collectors can actually look at one of the originals, and they can look at the swirl pattern on the inside of the kit and tell you which one of the 2 molds it came from. Nick Argento can do that. But when Universal found out about this, they then went and reinstated their rights. But at this point, the kits were already up and running, and they'd made a ton of money. But then they had to start paying the royalties after that. But they were making so much money off of them that they were like, yeah, and they even got rights to do more of them.
So for the first 2 or 3 years, they had a free run, you're saying?
Yeah, about 2. I think it was about 2 years. And when Universal saw what was going on, now after that though, they realized the monsters were winners, so they were more than happy to pay the royalties, which is saying something when you can get Abe Shikes to pay royalties.
Well, now fast forward to today. Okay, the Wolfman has been re-released by Atlantis because the Cheney family holds the license, not Universal. Yeah. The Mummy was able to be reproduced. The Creature was able to be reproduced, but not Dracula and Frankenstein.
Okay.
Because they've retained the rights to that, and they can't get the license for it.
All right. Okay. That makes sense. Well, yeah.
Which is a shame, you know.
Wait, I have to ask a question here.
Sure.
If Aurora brought these out in 61 and started to take off with it, and it was public domain, and they had a free reign for 2 years, why didn't any other major model company say, hey, we can make our own Frankenstein model in a different position, or wrestling around with Wolfman or something? I mean, none of them jumped on it.
I can only guess.
Available being in public domain.
Or am I wrong?
My guess would be that My guess would be that it was a cold and calculated decision. They looked at it and said, Aurora's already got critical mass. We're not going to catch up. The best we could do is chew off some of their sales and give. And it's just, in other words, since Aurora had the inertia, they probably just decided, you know what, it wasn't worth it. And to be quite honest, and I know this sounds a little smug, but there were some companies out there that and it's beneath us to make these things, you know, that kind of attitude. But I think the real reason was that it was just Aurora was up and running. They were it just the market. They pretty much had the market to themselves at that point. There were other companies, I guess, that probably did try to get into it, but yeah, and also you got to be willing to pay the rights, you know. So
they got into it with, other companies got into it with other things.
Yeah.
Like the big creatures, those NPC kits, the scorpion and the spider and all that stuff.
Yeah, and Monogram, Monogram, I know wasn't interested in it initially. Partly, and I love Monogram models, but their attitude was, it was a prestige thing. You know, we make the best kit model cars. We have the smallest catalog, but the best kits, and that's what we do. But then they kind of went another way with the Tom Daniels stuff a few years later.
Then they acquired the molds.
And they wound up acquiring the molds, and they did repop Godzilla and Superman and a few of the others, but they didn't do them all. And Abe Shikes, according to the Aurora book, at one point towards the end of Aurora, Abe Shikes was actually kind of annoyed that Aurora was known as the figure company. The figure, he didn't like that, and he actually had a few of the less underperforming molds destroyed.
Well, you have to understand, when they were doing the monsters, they were running the molds 24/7, 365.
Yep.
That's how popular they were. They could not make them fast enough, and they could not keep up with the demand.
I always thought if you want to get around copyright, you send what you do is you make the Invisible Man kit, and when the kit opens it up, all there is a base plate. But
Mattel did that with Hot Wheels with Wonder Woman's invisible plane.
Oh yeah, the empty bubble wrap,
or just a blister card.
Yeah, just a blister card. The cheapest one out there, 5 cents, kid. But the AMT and NPC were busy beating each other up on cars, along with Johan. And you had Monogram and Revell going at loggerhead with aircraft and cars. And Aurora...
was a little of everything.
Aurora, yeah, they were dipping their beaks into everything. But the monsters were really... And then they did really well for a while until 65 with slot cars. But that's also that's part of what crippled them when the 65 slot car. I don't know what happened in 1965, but slot cars just hit the wall. And, I mean, as Steve was saying earlier, there was no sliding out or anything. I mean, it was just like, all of a sudden, nobody's buying slot cars. And my only guess is everybody who wanted one had one. Monogram got hit hard. Revell got hit hard. Aurora probably got hit hardest of all. And I'm only guessing
they were in it the most because they had model motoring, which was sort of HO.
AFX.
And then they bought KB, which was their standard size stuff that they heavily invested in. And they had a lot of balls in the air, and they just all fell to the ground at the same time.
Well, yeah, the K&B stuff was 1/32nd scale, and there was some 1/24 scale stuff they with vacuum form bodies like the Batmobile, K&B Aurora. But Aurora did go from the vibrator cars to the Thunderjets to AFX, and AFX continued on, well into the 1980s and beyond.
Yeah, they stayed with it.
AFX is still out there today. As a matter of fact, the guy who owned K&B, his son owns AFX now.
Okay, interesting. Very good.
Well, we're down to our last 22 minutes here. One thing I wanted to get before I forgot was just as I finished the Hellcat, the Edward Hellcat, and I'm planning to put together a video for tomorrow or the next day that's going to compare it with the Airfix and the Heller Hellcat that I just did. I just want to give you guys a quick little teaser peek at it. It came out really nice for a tiny 1/72 scale kit. Okay, I just want to get that out before, because that's the kind of thing I'll forget to do. So getting back to the slot cars, the model cars, and everything. Of course, obviously, the slot cars in general were very basic kits as kits go, because they had to move. There's no point in putting a motor in it or much of an interior or anything. But I think Aurora actually had they actually had a dedicated factory, because they had several factories, and one of them was dedicated to that stuff, and it piled up pretty quick on them. And there's no question in my mind that was a direct contributor to their demise a few years later, their sellout. Monogram supposedly had the best tracks, depending on who you ask. If you've ever, Mark, have you ever seen a YouTube channel called Scale Car Garage with John Kitt up in Canada?
No, I haven't. No.
You'll enjoy it. I think you'll want to check it out. He actually does like blows resin, and hand makes his own chassis. He is a slot car guru, and a super nice guy. I've talked to him quite a few times. Yes, really great guy, and I think you'll enjoy his if you're into slot cars. But I was surprised by the amount of Japanese slot car stuff you had, because I didn't know that slot cars are so big in Japan. And of course, I've never been to Japan.
Yeah, they were about a year behind America, and often they would just reverse tool an injection molded American body and make their own tooling just by reverse engineering off of a plastic kit. Not all of them, but some of them. They had commercial tracks, and I used to find Japanese home market stuff from the 60s. They used to turn up at model car shows back in like the 1980s, and I would be buying them from guys that were in Vietnam, and they would take their R&R in Tokyo, and they'd buy a slot car at a Japanese hobby shop / slot car track, and bring it back home, never build it. And I was buying a couple of these from these folks, these veterans, 20 years later or 15 years later. After that, more recently, about 15 years ago, I started buying directly out of Japan through their version of eBay, which is called Yahoo Japan, and I was finding stuff directly there. So most of what you see in that one section of all the Japanese kits is directly out of an online eBay type situation out of Japan.
Okay.
If you look at what's going on in Japan now, they evolved from the traditional slot cars that we are just talking about, where they went the cars that fit in a slot, and they have different tracks that they configure, and that's a big competitive sport over there in the hobby.
Really?
And Tamiya sells these little cars, and they have wheels and body and the whole nine, and you can hop up the cars and change the gears and the tires and put bigger motors in them, and that's what they kind of evolved into out of traditional slot cars.
That's true, but they're actually a simplification of slot cars, because those cars carry their own batteries.
Yes, they do.
There is no control in the car. You have no throttle or braking action like you do off of a normal slot car controller. It's like you hot rod it up and you put hot batteries in it. You drop the slot and they're all zipping around, like rats in a maze. And I don't think it has a lot of penetration outside of their country. I've only seen little inklings of it here and there in the States, but nothing nothing really substantive. I might be wrong on that, but
No,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
Yeah, over there it's a big thing. Anywhere else, nah, not so much.
Yeah.
Because there's really no involvement after you build the car.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you turn it on, you drop it in the slot, you watch it go. Okay.
Well, I can do the same thing with turtles. Paint a number on its back, let it go. I mean, that's
Right.
you're just a spectator there. Well, Mark, are you planning on acquiring more stuff for your collection?
Yeah, I'm bidding on something right now, so we'll see if I get lucky with it or not. Yeah, I will continue to acquire things. Yes, that's always fun. If you find something special and worthy, you make a run at it. But on the other hand, I'm also content to let some things go at this point. And I've in the last 2 months I've run into a lot of interesting people, you guys included, that I've never met before, and it's great to find kindred spirits and share stories. Absolutely.
Well, I'm probably going to be meeting up with Jim Keeler in the near future. When's he going to be here, Steve?
May.
Yeah, in May he's going to be not too far away, so he and I'll probably get together and do an interview or something. Since I have travel benefits being a retired airline pilot, I'm halfway inclined to jump on a plane and come up. But you've already made a video of your stuff, so and I'm probably not to be trusted alone in your catacombs. You know, be walking out with a very square T-shirt, and you're like, "What? I'm not what? When when I was a kid, I used to shove my school books under my shirt and tuck my shirt in, so I wouldn't have to carry them because I didn't have a book bag or satchel. And you go into the toy store like that, and the first thing they do is pat you down because they think you got a model or something under your shirt. And,
oh my God, he's packing a Revell.
That's a T-shirt. There's a Larson cartoon.
Yeah.
Oh man, but I really do think we were all very, very lucky to grow up in the Overton window, the coolest toys and the most freedom. And modern times have a lot going for them, and today's kids are they're a good bunch. They want to save the world, and I think that's a great attitude. But I really think they're deprived. I mean, it sounds silly when I talk about it to young people. They're like, how can getting bloody knuckles working on a car be fun? I'm like, it's not fun at the time, but they make great memories, you know. And just I know a lot of these. I get so happy when I see someone under the age of 20 come into the hobby shop and they're interested in getting into kit models. And try not to become that creepy guy that hangs out at the hobby shop. You know, go ahead, get one, kid. But I'm afraid, which is ironic, because we now have access, although they're expensive, to the finest kits that have ever been made. That Edward Hellcat I just made goes together like a Tamiya kit. I mean, I had to file the wings down to get them to plug in, but other than that, it largely drop fit. Everything looked good. I was like, man, this is really a nice, easy kit to build, and it looked great when I was done. And I was like, and I built that old Airfix one, which had a lot of moving parts, and the old Heller kit, which was real simple. I'm like, it's just a world apart. And here, I'll show you a picture of the three of them side by side. And the irony is that when you're done at any kind of distance, they don't really look that different. Here's the all three of them there, and I mean they're just 1/72nd scale model Hellcats, but the level of complexity and the fit and everything was radically different on each kit. The Edward kit was like building something by Tamiya. I mean, it just very well engineered, very well detailed. The one in the middle of the Heller kit, by far and away the least parts count and the most basic. Everything was a butt joint. It was a lot of putty. The landing gear was way too spindly. And then the Airfix kit, which has a lot of moving parts, I mean, you can pose it with the wings folded. The wings are separate. They can be glued in folded, or glued in straight. The ailerons, elevator, and rudder all work. But of course, that creates big gaps, so they have room to maneuver, so it doesn't look quite as accurate, but it fit very well. And but you figure that Heller kit was probably a dollar. I have no idea what the Airfix kit would have cost. And what is an Edward kit going for? $20 or something? I mean, the cost difference is astronomical, largely due to the time. But when you put them on the shelf and you forget about the build, they all look good from 10 feet away. And,
well, they do look good, though. Yeah.
But I know there's more detail on the Heller kit. I mean, in the Edward kit, and knowing, it's like when people paint all the interior. I painted the full interior of all three of these airplanes, knowing full well you will never be able to see it, but I know it's there. Oh, by the way, one quick thing. The Airfix kit was the only one to come with a pilot figure. Don't know why. I guess the companies wanted to save that 7 cents or whatever. But anyway, but it's so they're still making the great. They're making some of the greatest kits ever made. But I don't, and a lot of them still use good old fashioned box art. Painted by an artist. I'm not a big fan of the digital stuff. It does not move me. But I really think from, 60 to 75 or 80. Yeah, I know. I buy these old kits and I build them. I realize they don't fit as well as the new ones and everything. But man, when I was a kid, I had so much fun building models. And Mark, you made a point that I think, I don't know if I'd ever verbalized it, but you were spot on. That the box art would sell the kit, but when you got home and opened it, there was a letdown.
But you didn't have the anticipation of when you built it, it would be like it was on the box?
I did, but you see this magnificent box art, and you're like, and you pull the top off, and, you open the plastic, and it's just, there's a whole bunch of parts, and like, I got a long road ahead of me to make this happen.
But that's what makes you a better modeler, because you strive to make it look like or better than what you saw in the box.
But here's the catch, Steve. With a lot of kits, that was fine. But some of them, you open it up, you look at that kit, and you realized this kit is going to, it just doesn't, it's not a real good molding. It's lack of detail. You just kind of like, the wings are too thick. It's just sort of, the box art was, there's one that drives me up the wall, is when you have magnificent box art on a crappy kit.
That's when you break out the fireworks.
That's what firecrackers are for. Well, guys,
that would bring the excitement back to it.
Yeah.
But sure. You're looking at that early artwork, and it shows the plane in motion. It shows it flying through space. It shows the guns blazing. It shows, it being pursued by an enemy plane, or it's chasing another plane, and all that drama and action and life and death. You're not going to build that in the kit. You're going to build it. It's going to be a static item sitting there. It's not going to have that motion, the smell and the sound and the fury. But yeah, the art conveys that, and that's the that's the fantasy you buy into as a child. You're buying it from the box top.
And as you
you build it, it's okay. But what do you do after you build it? You hang it from a string from the ceiling to kind of give it the illusion that it's flying. And a lot of us did that, where you hung the damn plane from a string from the ceiling. You weren't necessarily putting it on a shelf. You weren't taking the model cars you built and hanging them from a string from the ceiling, because they don't fly.
You could if you bought the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
It's marketing, you've got adults selling a product to children. We're naive, and we got to learn, and it's part of it all. It's fine. We still go out and buy another kit when it's all said and done. It kept us involved and amused. Yeah.
But there's a lot of kids, cars in particular, that you see the kit on the shelf, and the box art doesn't exactly make you want to build what's on the box art. It makes you build one that you've seen. or one that you think it should look better if it was in this color, or with this wheel, or with this motor. You know, the more you do them, you branch out with more things you can do to the kit.
Well, there's a subgroup of racing that developed in the last 10 years or so, and pretty much exclusive to America, where it was 1/24 scale slot car racing, and this would happen on commercial tracks. Not that there's money around, but there's enough to keep it going.
Yep.
And it was a simple one-piece brass chassis, so you had nice handling because you had a nice big slab of brass on the ground, and nice foam tires, and drill blank axles, and a moderately powerful motor. And you take a model kit body and detail it, or however you wanted to do it, and attach it to this brass chassis. And then you grace the snot out of the thing. I mean, and yes, if you lost control in the bank corner at full speed or something, it would fly off the track, and yes, it would break into pieces, and you'd try to patch it back together. But it was this sort of, I don't know, kind of a capricious, kind of a contrary thing. Yes, we know these, this 56 Ford or this, 52 Chevy I'm building as a 1/25th scale slot car, injection molded hard plastic body, is sort of a fool's errand. And maybe if I'm lucky, I'll keep it together for, 3 or 4 months worth of racing before it gets totally destroyed to the point where I can't resurrect it. But people like that form of racing. We'd have full venues of 8 people racing simultaneously on the big tracks, and we just loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it was a contrary thing. It flew in the face of logically just putting a vacuum form body on the car that would allow it to handle better, and a vacuum form body that would take far more pounding in mishaps than injection molded. And yes, it was almost all guys our age doing this that had, in a prior life or a prior time in their lives, built static model kits, and now they're using static model bodies and racing the heck out of them. So, oh, by the way, it's called hard body racing. It's the term they use. Not like bodybuilders.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the only way a guy like me is going to be accused of having a hard body.
Racing. I'll shut up now.
That's the only way I'm ever going to be accused of having a hard body. But you know what? The thing is, ultimately, the idea of models is to enjoy yourself, and if you guys are deriving pleasure from it, that's really all that matters. Of course, I'm sure there's a lot of boxes on a lot of shelves that have all the guts to these model cars.
Oh yeah, that'd be left over. Yeah.
But it's all good. Well, guys, that's pretty much it for this evening. We're coming up on 9 o'clock. Mark, is there anything you'd like to tell us before we sign off for the night?
I'd like to thank you guys for having me, and I'll let's see. It was the Aurora Piper Aztec I have to look for you, right?
Yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate that.
Okay, very good. All right, bye.
Take care, Mark.
Have a good night. I'll let you go.
Well,
thanks for
talk
joining
soon,
us.
Mark.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Well, Steve, Ken never... What? No Godzilla?
I guess the minute ran aground.
Uh-oh. Not again. Let's see. Let's look real quick here. Okay. Just real quick. We have to have the gratuitous Godzilla shot. That's really all I got for tonight, guys. I'm gonna make myself seasick moving this thing around like that. Steve, have we got anything going on before we sign off?
No,
right.
guys. We hope this was some informative live stream for you. And Mark has a phenomenal collection, and he's a great source of information. I hope that you guys, were able to, enjoy what he shared with us. Have a great night, and we look forward to seeing you on the next live stream.
Guys, I want to thank everybody for coming out. We had 166 people at one point. I think that may be a record. There's a link in the comment section if you want to go watch the 30-odd minute video of that was taken of Mark's whole collection. It's where I got the screen grabs from. So thank everybody for coming out tonight with us. I hope you had some fun. And as always, use the right hand, model on.